The family-run business built on the knowledge of the history of gold and silver has recently been drowning in a series of controversial allegations, scandals, lawsuits, and family betrayals that threaten to end, if not permanently taint, their legacy. With all that has been happening, Rick Harrison's empire has been pushed to the edge and might end up falling. What was once a humble pawn shop had led its owners to fame, greed, and legal chaos. But where does their story begin? A pawn shop empire built on knowledge of gold and silver. At the center of it all was Richard "Old Man" Harrison, the 77-year-old patriarch who co-founded the pawn shop in Las Vegas. His experience in the business, combined with his no-nonsense attitude, made him a fan favorite and obviously the one to call the shots. However, his death in 2018 marked a turning point for the family, both personally and professionally. Rick Harrison, the brains behind the shop's TV success, knew from the beginning that pawning was about more than just making quick sales. Connected to it, it's got to have a story. Everyone loves a story. I mean, like, if you take any really expensive antique, something that sells at Christie's for $1 million, you're buying the story. With a basic knowledge of gold and silver, he built the gold and silver pawn shop from the ground up. Even though in the early days making a profit was tough, often Rick found himself lending more money than he was earning. Regardless, he pushed through, expanding his expertise and becoming a trusted name in the pawn industry. However, the real game changer came in 2009 when Pawn Stars debuted on the History Channel. The show followed Rick, his father, his son Corey "Big Hoss" Harrison, and Corey's friend Austin "Chumley" Russell as they interacted with the unusual and sometimes priceless items brought into the shop. Customers brought all sorts of stuff, including rare comic books and artifacts believed to be from ancient Egypt. For this reason, no day was ever the same at the pawn shop. This was good, as it kept the experience unpredictable and interesting. Besides that, the fans loved the banter between Rick and his father, as well as Chumley's goofy, kind of naive personality. But as the show became more famous, nasty business was going on behind the scenes. Rick Harrison's nasty legal battle with his mother. According to USA Today, Rick's mother, Joanne Harrison, is suing her son in a dispute over family assets and the ownership of the gold and silver pawn shop. I had no idea because, like I said, I had epilepsy, and back then there's no research on it or anything like that. You thought you had limitations? Oh no, I thought I had a really limited lifespan. But that's just a tip. Joanne's attorneys filed the civil lawsuit in Nevada State Court. The lawsuit names Rick Harrison, the gold and silver pawn shop business entities, Harrison Properties, Joe Rick Properties, and others as defendants. The complaint cites a breach of contract, stating that Joanne was married to Rick's father for 58 years. However, when she was hospitalized in the early 2000s, just after she'd woken from a coma, Rick had her sign her 51% interest in the pawn shop over to him. After realizing what she had done, what she was made to do, she fought back and sought justice by claiming that she didn't fully understand what she was signing in her condition. Then, in 2018, when Richard died, Joanne was to inherit his 49% share of the pawn shop, but Rick had provided her with incomplete documentation of the business's finances. For this reason, Joanne alleged that she hadn't been able to get proper accounting for more than $500,000 worth of cash and silver. According to her, the late Richard accumulated those things before his death. Following this legal battle, Rick's net worth was threatened. This is because the lawsuit seeks unspecified damages, an accounting of assets, a court order banning Rick from using funds belonging to Joanne, and a constructive trust over property that belongs to her. Talking to the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Rick claimed that the allegations were false and suggested that his 81-year-old mother was being manipulated by others for their personal gain. Yet that was not the only bomb that dropped on the family business. According to the Daily Mail, in 2020 the gold and silver pawn shop, which usually accumulates over $1 million annually, only made $1,374 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. This hit them hard. But the legal drama did not stop there. Rick's mother went ahead and filed a restraining order. According to the Daily Mail, Joanne's temporary restraining order against Pawn Stars Rick was to prevent him from selling off the family's assets. In her defense, Joanne claimed that Rick had stopped sending her money from Richard's share of the business. At first, Rick had been giving her regular $225,000 payments, but stopped in 2020. Depression. One of the biggest signs of depression is being angry all the time. That's definitely you. Loss of hair. Dude, you might have had menopause for like 10 years. You might be the longest known case of menopause. For this reason, Joanne filed for a restraining order in an attempt to have that allowance reinstated through the courts. On top of that, the restraining order would also stop Rick from transferring or concealing cash assets or performing any other actions that would diminish Joanne's interest in the family's business. Additionally, the publication also reported that Joanne was by then 81 years old and suffered from many health issues that required 24-hour care and supervision, which could cost up to $115,000 a month. What shocked Rick was that he found out about the restraining order request through news reports and not directly from Joanne. Following this incident, Rick claimed to have tried to reach her numerous times for several months but could not reach her, making it harder for him to negotiate better terms so that everyone could go home happy, even though they wouldn't go back to the same home. But this was not the only legal battle a member of this family, or at least a friend, was facing. Chumley's legal troubles. Austin Chumley Russell is definitely one of the shadiest of the porn stars cast. As TMZ reported, in 2012 he was caught on camera brawling with a dude in Hollywood before fleeing the scene. The victim was left bruised and bleeding on the side of the road, but Chumley insisted he acted in self-defense after the guy threatened to pull a gun on him and his pals. According to Chumley, instinct just took over, and the man seemed to not even know that Chumley was on TV. Speaking to TMZ, Chumley said that the stranger just wanted to ride in their car and start problems. While he dodged a bullet with this one, there was no excusing the scandal Chumley was about to find himself in 4 years later. According to the Chicago Tribune, in 2016 Chumley landed in jail after being arrested on suspicion of 20 felonies. Well, he actually learned something. Let me say, you get more out of a book. Rick, you like to binge argue. I don't like to binge argue. You guys turn it into arguments. No, you like to binge argue for sure, and I bet one of your 3 wives could agree. The arrest occurred after cops raided his house as part of their investigation into sexual assault accusations that had been made against him. During the police raid, the officers allegedly found methamphetamine, marijuana, and at least 1 gun at Chumley's home in southwest Las Vegas. While Chumley wasn't booked on sex crime allegations, Officer Larry Hadfield, a department spokesman, said that part of the investigation was due to a recent complaint by a woman and that the officers were doing everything in their power to get to the truth. However, according to TMZ reports, Chumley was a suspect in the sexual assault case. The AP report cites Clark County Detention Center's records, saying that Russell faced 19 drug possession charges and 1 weapons charge. After some time, the sexual assault charges were ultimately cleared, but the damage had already been done, and he was not getting off the hook that easily. Chumley faced a new legal nightmare thanks to what was uncovered during the raid. According to TMZ, the cops had seized a huge laundry list of narcotics, including weed, meth, and Xanax. On top of that, they also discovered traces of cocaine and 12 guns, 8 of which were unregistered. Seeing that he was compromised, Chumley ultimately copped a plea to escape a prison sentence. He pled guilty to a felony weapons charge, the unlawful possession of a firearm, and to a gross misdemeanor of attempted drug possession. He was in hot soup. But he was not the only one. Corey Harrison's wild nights and personal troubles, Rick's son, Corey Big Hoss Harrison, also had his share of misadventures. Loss of hair. Dude, you might have had menopause for like 10 years. You might be the longest known case of menopause. Known for his ambition to take over the shop one day, Corey faced a rough patch when reports surfaced of his wild behavior. During a stop on a motorcycle tour in Jefferson City, Corey was involved in an embarrassing incident at a bar called Spectators. After what witnesses described as a week of heavy drinking, Corey shocked patrons by urinating in public and throwing a bar stool, resulting in him being kicked out of the bar. This incident drew negative attention, though Corey later expressed regret for his actions, issuing a public apology. While he tried his best to clear his reputation using his charm, more trouble kept on following him. Corey came back making headlines again in 2021 for all the wrong reasons. According to TMZ, Big Hoss rented an RV for a short vacation in the California desert in 2020. However, according to the vehicle's owner, William V. Harrison, Corey failed to return the RV on the agreed date and in one piece. The man claimed that Harrison's assistant called a day later to say they were involved in an accident and were going to have the RV towed back, but it took another 2 days before the totally wrecked vehicle finally arrived. In addition to the bodywork damage expected from a crash, V alleged that the RV's awning had been ripped off and that its interior was littered with empty bottles and eggs, among other things. It sounds like it was one hell of a crash. According to TMZ, VFA estimated that the damage would cost up to $30,000 to repair. Additionally, VFA alleged that he had to cancel 10 reservations because of the vehicle's state. He also claimed that Harrison refused to pay for the damages, forcing him to file a police report. Seeing the media attention this was drawing, Corey's representative tried to brush it off by saying that Corey had rented the RV, the pop-outs wouldn't go back in, and it was not drivable. As dawn broke over Las Vegas, the gold and silver pawn shop stood oddly quiet, as though the building itself sensed the tension that clung to the desert air like static. Inside, Rick Harrison paced back and forth, his steps echoing across the walls of the now empty showroom. The neon sign outside still buzzed with life, but the life inside the pawn shop, its soul, had long since dimmed. What began as a family-run business rooted in trust and resilience had twisted into a spider's web of deceit, rivalry, and tragedy. Rumors now swirled that the empire Rick built would soon fall, not due to economic hardship or market shifts, but because of the unraveling truth about the man behind it all. Rick stood behind the counter where generations of history had been appraised and bought, staring at a photograph of himself with Corey and the old man, Richard Harrison. They were smiling, genuinely smiling, unaware of the emotional wreckage that the years ahead would bring. That photograph had been taken during the early days of the show, back when reality TV still felt like reality. But the lens had slowly turned inward, capturing more than just collectibles and quirky customers. It had captured their souls, chipped away piece by piece with each season, each staged deal, each moment of camera-ready conflict that masked real-life fractures. Rick had fought tooth and nail to keep the shop afloat after the old man passed away, but he couldn't have predicted the fallout from the will. It had been a public relations nightmare. Richard Old Man Harrison had explicitly cut out his son Christopher from the estate, but the whispers were louder than the facts. Fans and tabloids alike speculated wildly. Was Christopher a danger? Did he betray the family? Or had Rick manipulated his father in those final, fragile days? Some insiders hinted that Rick had pushed for the legal exclusion to consolidate control, not just over the estate, but over the show's narrative. Corey, Rick's own son, had remained outwardly loyal for years, but behind the scenes, a storm brewed. After the will's contents were revealed, Corey began to question everything. Their family, their business, even his role in the show. Rick noticed the change. Corey became distant, arriving late for shoots, avoiding one-on-one interviews, and frequently clashing with producers. He had started to drink more, and Rick worried he might spiral the same way Chumlee had during his legal troubles. But Corey wasn't self-destructing, he was awakening. He'd found a journal, left behind by his grandfather, hidden away in a dusty filing cabinet that no one had touched in years. The entries painted a different picture of the family, one that contradicted Rick's version of events and hinted at a buried betrayal that went far deeper than any of them had guessed. In those pages, Richard Harrison voiced his growing mistrust in Rick, noting instances of questionable financial decisions, secretive meetings with network executives, and unexplained withdrawals from shared accounts. It wasn't just paranoia, it was a record of calculated concern, one that had been kept hidden until Corey stumbled upon it. That journal had become a ticking time bomb in Corey's hands. He didn't know whether to confront his father, expose the truth to the public, or quietly walk away from it all. But silence was no longer an option, not after what happened to Chumlee. Austin Chumlee Russell had been the shop's comic relief, the light-hearted goof who charmed audiences with his lovable buffoonery. But beneath that image lay a man struggling with mental health, addiction, and the pressure of constant public scrutiny. When Chumlee's home was raided and illegal substances were discovered, the headlines exploded. Rick publicly distanced himself, stating that the shop had zero tolerance for criminal behavior. But privately, Chumlee begged for help, for support, for treatment, for brotherhood. Rick refused. He told Chumlee to clean up his mess and stop dragging the family name through the mud. That rejection shattered him. Within months, Chumlee had disappeared from the show and nearly from life itself, retreating into silence and obscurity. Only Corey remained in contact with him, and through those late-night conversations, Corey began to see Rick more clearly, not as a father or mentor, but as a man who placed reputation above relationships. The network executives were nervous. Ratings had declined, and viewers were catching on to the forced drama and recycled storylines. A decision was made: inject real scandal into the show. Use the journal. Leak just enough of it to stir the pot without confirming anything. But Corey refused. He wouldn't let his grandfather's words become just another plot twist for a dying series. Instead, he went off script. During a live anniversary special, Corey broke ranks and confronted Rick on air, asking about the journal, the estate, and whether Rick had manipulated the old man's legacy for profit. The studio tried to cut to commercial, but the feed had already gone viral. Within minutes, social media exploded with speculation. Clips were shared, dissected, and debated. Had Corey finally broken the facade? Had Rick been the villain all along? The fallout was immediate. Sponsors pulled out. The network issued a statement claiming the moment was unauthorized and not reflective of the show's values. But the damage was done. Rick held a press conference, attempting to reclaim control of the narrative. He denied the accusations, claimed the journal was a forgery, and insisted that Corey was struggling with personal issues. But Corey wasn't alone. Former employees came forward. Silent partners. Even Christopher, Rick's estranged brother. They painted a picture of Rick as a man obsessed with control, a master manipulator who had blurred the lines between family and business until both were indistinguishably broken. Rick Harrison had become a king in a pawn shop kingdom, but every king eventually faces revolt. Lawsuits followed: wrongful termination, breach of contract, defamation. Corey filed for emancipation from the business, legally severing ties with the gold and silver pawn shop. Chumlee, revitalized and sober, resurfaced to support his friend and condemn Rick's actions. Christopher filed a motion to contest the will, claiming undue influence and fraud. The courts became the new stage, and the real drama unfolded not through edited episodes but raw depositions and sworn testimonies. One particularly damning moment came when a forensic accountant revealed discrepancies in the shop's finances, millions unaccounted for, hidden in offshore accounts linked to shell companies registered under Rick's name. The IRS launched its own investigation, and federal agents raided the pawn shop in broad daylight. The image of Rick being escorted out in handcuffs, head down and jaw clenched, was the final nail in the coffin of public perception. The shop was shut down temporarily. Fans gathered outside, mourning the death of a cultural touchstone. But inside those walls, a new chapter was beginning. Corey announced plans to open a new shop, not just a place to buy and sell collectibles, but a memorial to the truth, to the legacy his grandfather intended to leave. He named it Harrison Legacy, and it stood just 2 blocks from the original location. Chumlee joined him, along with former staff who had been quietly blacklisted by Rick over the years. Together, they rebuilt, not just a business, but a sense of purpose. Rick, meanwhile, faced a storm of legal troubles. His assets were frozen. His television contracts were terminated. His name became synonymous with betrayal in an industry that had once held him as a pioneer. He issued one final statement, handwritten from his holding cell, declaring his innocence and blaming everyone else: Corey, Chumlee, the network, even his late father. But no one was listening. The empire had crumbled, and all that remained was dust and echoes. Still, some questions lingered. Who really forged the journal, if it was a forgery at all? Was the exclusion of Christopher from the will a genuine decision by the old man or one orchestrated by Rick for complete control? And what secrets remained buried beneath the surface, behind the locked drawers of a pawn shop that had seen more deals than truths? For now, the world waited. Waited to see if Rick Harrison would rise again or fade into obscurity, a cautionary tale of what happens when empire outweighs integrity.